Good morning, my brothers and sisters. Welcome to Season 2, Episode number 16 of Be With Me. You can pop over to the website, bewithme.us, and sign up if you want to get these every day. I'm fond of saying, and it's one of my little sound bites, is I don't like the Bible, and that's true about 10% of the time. That's not true in today's passage. But I will say this, is that the Bible sure is strange, and we're going to encounter a strange passage or a strange part of a passage today that we will need to wrestle with, and I needed to wrestle with it. And the final question I'd like to ask, so I'm going to start with my final question, which is this. If I lived like this part of the Bible is true, what would I do? Or if I lived like this part of the Bible is true, what would I believe? Or what would I seek to know? Or if I lived like this part of the Bible is true, what would I say? What would I confess? What would I resolve? This passage that we're going to get to really trashes the idea of, hey, I was going to get around to that spiritual decision. I was going to get around to that thing that the Lord was working on in my heart. I was going to get around to that. He absolutely trashes, and he really says, now's the time. All right, let's go to the passage, and you'll see where we're going on this. We have just come from a little lesson on Noah, which I'll start up with, and then we're going to go to a guy named Lot, and both of those things are going to have something to do with let's get busy today. The context of the passage is the return of Christ, the second coming of Christ. And it says, for as the lightning flashes in Luke 17:24, from the sky, from one side to the other, so will the Son of Man be in his day. But first he must suffer many things and be rejected by this generation. Just as it was in the day of Noah, so it will be in the day of the Son of Man. They were eating. So he's describing the time of Noah. They were eating and drinking and marrying and being given in marriage until the day when Noah entered the ark and the flood came and destroyed them all. So let me just pause there, just review a little bit about Noah. So the point that we got to a little bit yesterday is that everything that happened to Noah and the flood and the ark and the coming judgments, it was all explained prior. And so Noah obeys God. He builds an ark in his driveway. Best scholars today say it probably took him maybe 75 years, or certainly decades, 20 to 120 years. So let's say in the middle of that, 75 decades. And people were given the opportunity to repent, but nobody did. And when the flood, it was a flood and also bursting forth of the windows of heaven and fountains of the great deep burst forth. I thought it was actually very beautifully described in the movie Noah. I'm not particularly recommending the movie, but I am recommending the image from the movie of at this particular moment when fountains burst forth from underneath and fountains burst forth from the heavens, and people, even though they had 75 years, approached it like, hey, this is a big surprise. We're unprepared. We were unready for this. We just participated with life as if it was normal. And the point is that God remembered Noah. All right, so then he goes to another example, and that is Lot. Here we go. Likewise, just as it was in the days of Lot, they were eating and drinking, buying and selling, planting and building. In other words, life just going on like a normal day. But on the day when Lot went out from Sodom, that is, when the Lord had proclaimed a judgment on Sodom, and fire and brimstone and sulfur came from the sky, he gave Lot and Mrs. Lot some specific commands, which is escape for your life. Do not look back. That was a specific command. And unfortunately, that's not what happened. So they go out. God is raining down fire and brimstone onto the city that they knew and people that they knew. And she had a choice, which was to obey wholeheartedly, which she chose not to do, or even obey half-heartedly, which she chose not to do. And she just frankly disobeys both of those commands, which is don't look back and don't stop even, was part of the command. She does both. And she disobeys the Lord, and she has immediate judgment foisted upon her and turns into a pillar of salt. So it will be on the day when the Son of Man is revealed. So that is, he's giving these examples of Noah and Lot to say, hey, people are going to say, hey, this was sudden. I had no time to prepare. Well, that's not true. The preparation time is now. And if this is true, so let's go to our conclusion. If this is true, and I lived like this part of the Bible is true, how would I change? And I would like to address this both at unbelievers, and I'm super glad that you're here today, Mr. and Mrs. Unbeliever, and also then to believers. For some, this will be your last chance, your last opportunity to sort of hear this salvation obedience message. So in Noah's story, we're not the righteous ones that are getting in the boat. We're the guys that are watching Noah build the ark in the driveway, and day after day we say, this guy is crazy. This thing that God told him isn't true. So I'm speculating today, or asking you to consider, what if this is true, and what he said about the kingdom, that it's already here, and that he's coming back to occupy and claim his kingdom, and to publicly show himself and universally declare himself, both to take his own home and to judge those who refuse him. So I'm asking you, unbeliever, don't be one that doesn't believe and doesn't yield and doesn't receive. I'm asking you to take his yoke of faith, pick up your cross. And to the believer, let me turn to the believer now. God is sanctifying you and asking you to be obedient. And that thing that I've heard believers say, we all say this, hey, I was going to get around to that, or I was going to be whatever, purer and more control, or would have fixed my problem with my zipper that we've talked about on time and time again. Whatever the compelling thing that the Lord is doing to you, for both the unbeliever and the believer, hey, the time is now. So if I lived like this, what would I do differently? Think about that today. Thanks for listening.